Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra. I'm back again with all of you, and this time I'm going to talk about different aspects of relationships. I'll be starting with something very important that we all call living life on autopilot. So autopiloting is a very popular thing today because we are looking forward to everything that can be autopiloted. But there's something that we would not like to be autopiloted, and that is our lives. So what is the way out of the autopilot mode? What things we can do in order to move out of this menace that we call the autopilot mode? There are constructive ways through which we can move out of this quagmire, move out of this spiral of silence, if we are serious about doing well in life. And that begins with self-awareness. So once I am aware of myself, self-awareness involves being aware of the different aspects of one's self, including traits, behaviors, and feelings. Self-awareness is one of the first components of the self-concept to emerge. So what do I think about myself? What is my self-concept? What am I? Who am I? Are some of the questions that we need to answer on a regular basis. It will mean that we are concerned about self-awareness, we are concerned about self-discovery, and we are concerned about self-regulation. It will also mean that we are serious about self-management. It all begins with the development of the right kind of self-awareness. So if I have to know a lot of things about myself, I need to first start with the traits of myself, my personality. So there are several theories associated with the idea of traits, but if we try to understand what we mean by traits, we can look at the famous ocean model of traits that begins with openness. That means somebody is insightful, original, and curious about things. If somebody is open, that means somebody is ready to think out of the box, somebody is ready to go out and explore new challenges, new possibilities, because somebody has all these qualities. The other type of trait is the conscientiousness trait. So conscientiousness trait means that people are ambitious, but at the same time they are very disciplined. They have consistency and reliability. So I need to test whether I have these traits or not. The third most important trait is the extraversion or extroversion trait. So such people are outgoing. They are very energetic and very confident. They are generally called people's person because they have wonderful people skills. They can easily get along with people, spend time with them. They can learn from them. They can, contribute to their personal growth as well. So people who have this particular type of trait are outgoing. They're very energetic and they're very confident about themselves. A fourth type of trait is the agreeableness trait. People who are agreeable, they're very tactful, they are kind, they are loyal. So such people take care of others around them. They show kindness and they show loyalty towards people. So these are the people who can actually get into serious relationships. There is a fifth type of trait that's called neuroticism. So such people are characterized by pessimism, They express a lot of anxiety, insecurity, and fearfulness. So such people do not generally get along well with others, and then they have issues in relationships. So when we look at these traits, we can understand what kind of traits are the most likely to lead to positive and sustainable relationships. The openness or the agreeableness, or the neurotic trait, or the extraversion trait, or the conscientiousness trait. So when you look at all these traits, you can easily figure out that the first 4 traits can easily get into serious and sustainable relationships, barring only the last, that's a neurotic trait. So that way we can take a look at the other things now. So the other things are feelings. That means whenever there is an experience, it will lead to some kind of thought, some kind of thinking in the mind, and that will result in some kind of feeling. And feeling in turn will lead to some kind of behavior. So when we look at this cognitive triangle, we can easily understand, we can figure out that whenever there is a situation, we have thoughts about the facts of that situation. And when that happens, those thoughts trigger some kind of feelings in us. And based on these feelings, we engage in certain types of behaviors, which in turn impact the situation again. So that way it creates a cycle. It all begins with a situation which results in some kind of thought. That thought triggers some kind of feelings in us, and those feelings result in some kind of behavior. And again, those behaviors trigger some kind of situation, or those behaviors impact those situations. So it may be either positively or negatively, and that is how the entire cycle continues. So when we look at these things closely, we need to find out that's a very close connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And we need to be familiar with the whole cycle, so that we begin to take care of these things. When it comes to managing thoughts, it's all about managing our minds. So if we know how to manage our minds, we can actually ensure that we get the right kind of thoughts, so that we do not bring the wrong or the negative perspectives to situations. So there are people who are very, very pessimistic. They will always find some problem with all kinds of situations because they carry that perspective to that particular situation. So the perspectives that we bring to any situation or experience will ultimately color our point of view, our thought. It can be for better, worse, or it can also be neutral. So therefore, it's very important that we learn how to manage our minds so that we get the right kind of thoughts even in challenging situations. Secondly, emotions. We all know emotions are the flow and experience of feelings. For example, it can be joy, sadness, anger, or fear. External instances, or it can also be internal instances. I may suddenly begin to feel sad if a very old memory comes back haunting me again. So it can be internally driven, it can also be externally driven. While emotions are universal, we may experience them and respond to them in a different way, and that happens. So some people may struggle with understanding what emotion they are experiencing, and that's exactly when they find problems with emotional regulation. That brings us to strengths and weaknesses. It's very important that we take care of our strengths and our weaknesses. We are aware of our strengths and our weaknesses, because self-awareness can only be strengthened when we come to terms with our strengths and our weaknesses. So there are several types of tests that can be taken in order to determine one's strengths and weaknesses. But once we know our strengths, we are going to strengthen them further, and once we know our weaknesses, we are going to work on those weaknesses and then try to overcome those weaknesses and convert them into our strengths, or at least do something that will prevent these weaknesses to act as stumbling blocks on our way to our goals. Similarly, likes and dislikes. If I want to be self-aware, I must be aware of what I like and what I dislike. And my likes and dislikes should not fluctuate depending on different situations. So, if I say, I like this, but I do not like this when it is served in this manner. So that means there is something else that determines whether I like that particular thing or do not like that. So I must be very, very aware of my likes and my dislikes, and then my values as well, because values play a very, very important role, because they are ultimately the determiners of our behavior. The way we conduct ourselves, the way we approach something, the way we behave with something or somebody are in fact determined by the value systems that we create for ourselves. So these value systems actually drive us. So it's very important that we are aware of our value systems, what kind of values I generally prefer, what kind of values I move ahead with. For example, if I say, I value honesty, I value integrity, I value reliability, that means I'll be cultivating those qualities in me. I will continue to be honest, come what may. So the value system plays a very important role in our everyday relationships. Therefore, if I am aware of my value system, then I can enter into a serious relationship with people around me. So, because these values will ultimately guide our behaviors. So, therefore, we need to take care of these values. Then, attitudes. So, attitudes actually refer to a set of emotions, beliefs and behaviors toward a particular object, person, thing, or even an event. So attitudes are often the result of experience or upbringing. There is no doubt about it. And they can have a powerful influence over our behavior. So if I do not have the right kind of upbringing or right kind of experience, my attitudes will gradually change. So if a person is subjected to all sorts of negativities, the person's attitude will gradually change. If a person is subjected to all sorts of superiority, the person's attitude will also change. So it's very, very important that we understand what our attitude is. So the moment we are aware of our attitude, we can think of fine-tuning it, working on it, improving it, and then taking it to people around us, because attitude is a major roadblock when it comes to relationships. Most relationships get strained when there is a mismatch of attitudes, because two people with negative attitudes cannot make it a positive relationship. So for a positive relationship, we need to have a positive attitude set. Similarly, motivation is also very, very important. There are two kinds of motivation, extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic is, of course, it's driven by some kind of gain, some kind of achievement, some kind of reward. So it may be very, very powerful at times, but it doesn't always happen to us. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is very important because it continuously drives us from within. So it's very important that we take care of our motivation, we need to question ourselves what we believe in, what things motivate us. So it's generally a process that initiates, guides, and maintains our goals and our goal-oriented behaviors as well. So it is what causes us to act. So without motivation, we are certainly not going to act. So whether it is getting a glass of water, or reduce thirst, or reading books to gain knowledge. So everything is actually driven by motivation. So in everyday use, we generally refer to the term motivation quite frequently to describe why a person does something and why some others do not do anything. So it is in fact the driving force behind all human actions. So it's very important that we take care of our motivation, especially our intrinsic motivation. So there are a few things that actually determine our motivation. So if we set a huge goal for us, we'll certainly not feel motivated to act, because that goal itself will be so overwhelming that we may lose interest, we may develop self-doubt about approaching or pursuing that particular goal. So it's always a good idea to motivate ourselves by giving us simpler, manageable, achievable tasks. So that way we come to the end of this session on self-awareness. So I'm sure you have taken note of these two important things that I talked about in this session. The autopilot lifestyle is going to ruin our life, because it will stop us, prevent us from doing anything, from thinking anything, from achieving anything. On the other hand, if we begin to become more and more self-aware, if we begin to discover ourselves, if we begin to regulate ourselves by taking care of all these things, it will mean that we will be developing ourselves in multiple ways, and we will be experiencing personal growth in several ways. So that's all for this session. Thank you for joining me. I'll meet you again in my next session. Bye-bye.